Endgame now.
My name is Jen Underdahl, and I was the visual effects producer on Marvel's Endgame. My main tasks are to work with our directors, Joe and Anthony, and our studio heads to make sure that the vendors we are bringing on board are the right vendors for the scope of work that we have for the show. I have to look at these two movies as a single project. It's Thanos' movie, Infinity War is. So in 2016, we knew that very early on we were going to need to test this before we even shot a frame of footage to give some sort of ease and peace of mind to our filmmakers that yes, this guy could carry 2/3 of the film. We worked with Josh's people and our production staff to bring him in and work with Joe and Anthony. We did some very early testing in a mocap volume. We had the head cam set up. He's got dots on his face, and those two cameras are capturing his facial performance. So we kind of did this whole gauntlet. This whole gauntlet of testing and scanning, capturing every aspect of Josh's face in different range of motions. So not only was it a technical discovery for us, it was also a character discovery for Josh, Joe, and Anthony. And what we found, we kind of had imagined Thanos being this big, mean, kind of over-the-top character. But how Josh played him, it was beautiful. His performance was menacing but subtle, terrifying, but in little flinches. So we realized at that moment that we really needed to have a company that could capture all that and pull his performance through the prosthetics so that when you are like this on Thanos, you felt the terror in your bones with this character, because you had to.
All that for a drop of blood.
Digital Domain and Weta were key in Thanos' development. So we gave them all this scanning data, we gave them all this footage, and in the end, a couple months later, they turned around a version of Thanos that looked crazy like Josh. Ideally, in any situation when you have a digital character, you want to have two actors acting to one another. That's where the magic happens, and we can replace it digitally, but we certainly can't manufacture that performance. So it's really important for us to put the actors in a situation where they are speaking to one another face to face, eye to eye, line to eye line. Now, it gets complicated by the fact that Thanos is 15 feet tall. If Josh is in movement, for example, fighting with anybody, we put proxies on him. We put like displacement suits. That's so that if you have to touch him or interact with him in any way, the opposing actor's hands are in the correct position. Eye lines, same thing. We will oftentimes put an eye line on a pole, on a backpack. He looks kind of silly on set, but he's pretty awesome about it. But oftentimes, whatever, we try as much as possible to get eye line to eye line.
Maybe smash a few things along the way.
I think it's gratuitous, but whatever.
So the whole goal with Smart Hulk was to bring old Hulk together with Dr. Banner. And what was that going to look like?
I put the brains and the brawn together, and now look at me. Best of both worlds.
Borrowing from the 2D designs that came from Marvel, we then had to sculpt Smart Hulk into a 3D model. You always want to have little anchor points in your digital characters where you see your actor's features to some degree. I mean, everybody kind of fell in love with him actually when we started to see him come to life. And the more we found we incorporated Mark, the more his performance also stayed true to the digital performance.
When I had the gauntlet, the stones, I really tried to bring her back.
ILM, they had done Hulk from Avengers 1. So we knew that they already knew his character, they knew his skin, how to deal with his skin technically, they knew his musculature inside and out. So really blending him with a more humanoid proportioned character was the right way to go casting-wise for that character. So we find that in visual effects, the more we stay out of the way of the filmmakers and the actors, the better results we're going to get. The footage is what we derive all of our artistry from. So when that is genuine, when that is fluid, when that is moving, we really get the best of both worlds. In a case like Smart Hulk, you want to make sure that Mark is interacting on set with all the other characters. In the case of the Avengers compound, he needs to be there with Tony, he needs to be there with Natasha, He needs to be in that scene. So we'll set up a motion capture volume on set. So he's surrounded by cameras and he's in a mocap suit. So again, visual effects needs to really, in all of our technical gathering, we need to take a back seat to what's happening, all the performing that's happening on set.
Cap?
Hi, Sam.
So in the case of Captain America, what would a super soldier look like if he had aged 106 years? What would his skin look like? So we did some development with that, getting targets with our studio and our directors to say, hey, is this where we should be aiming? Once they bought off on what that look was going to be, we then started casting for a skin double, looking around for an old guy who approximates the same age and face shape of Cap or what Cap would be, who's shot in the same lighting conditions right after Chris performs. He gives the same lines. He tries to emulate Chris's performance as much as possible so that it doesn't take a whole lot of hammering when we go tink onto Chris's face. In addition to the skin double, you also need to give him sort of an older man's body, older man's sort of overall profile. So as you've seen with Skinny Steve, in Captain America 1, Lola's able to take significant size off of Chris Evans. Pretty much in every instance on Captain America 1 where we're shooting Chris Evans, it's Chris Evans. That's his body, and he's a big dude. We need to get him down to a 90-pound weakling. To do so, Lola will do an overall warp on his body and literally squish him down so that he fits in the plate as this character. They did the same sort of thing, though not with as heavy a hand, for old Cap. They took some neck off of him so he wasn't quite as beefy here, and we shrunk his shoulders and sort of his overall profile to give him that 106-year-old super soldier look.
Oh my God! Oh my God, it's so good to see you.
Now we've got Endgame Thor. Endgame Thor has lost everything repeatedly. So he has dealt with it by eating a lot and drinking a lot and playing video games with Korg and Meek. So to get this character, we fought really hard to make sure that we had a practical solution to this, because we've seen it done before. You can put a bodysuit on somebody and it can work. Marvel contacted and contracted Legacy Effects to do the prosthetic, and I'll be darned, I mean, every little hair on that thing, every little bit of skin patch, it's super convincing. So we were thrilled when we saw that come through because it impacts performance. Again, you've got Chris Hemsworth really getting into the part because of the character he's embodying. And for us, it was just cleanup work, really. There were going to be natural seams as he's moving his arms around. There's going to be folds, and you had to kind of suture him into the thing, and so there was a seam down the back that we had to clean up. But by and large, that's Legacy's prosthetic and Hemsworth's hilarious performance. Our work is super easy in those instances because, you're getting the best of both worlds, practical and visual effects.
Oh, look. It's like a little puppy, all happy and everything. Do you want to go to space? You want to go to space, puppy? I'll take you to space.
In the case of Rocket, for us, pretty easy because we just stole him from Guardians. We had to put him in a new costume, which was super cool. But I think all of the character work had been done pretty early on him, so it was just continuing his arc as a character.
Hi. You must be Mom. I got to think, come on, we gotta move.
There's no real reason to put dots on Bradley Cooper's face. The difference between a raccoon and a human face is they're pretty far off. We will, when we're in the room with him for ADR, we'll have different cameras on him so that we can see whatever gesticulations he's doing. We can see his facial expressions, and we can take all that, we can translate it into that character.
I live for the simple things.
Like how much this is gonna hurt.
You do have to make these non-humanoid things human. You have to sell it. You have to love them. You have to cheer for them. You have to feel their pain. And oftentimes, that can come down to just a simple layer of water in the eye that we put in just to really pull you emotionally into a scene. So on set, we'll have a body double, Sean Gunn, who is remarkable at getting to Rocket's 4 foot high. I mean, he folds himself up. It's crazy how he's able to do it and walk and jump down from ledges. And those are important, as we talked about, because you want to have your actors acting against one another. And also helps a great deal with camera blocking, so that our camera guy knows how to go from a digital thing, to a live action element.
This is the fight of our lives. And we're gonna win. whatever it takes.
You may have noticed the time suits are a combination of Ant-Man, Tony Stark, and Guardians tech. And that took quite a while for us to land on. By the time we got a final version, we were already into principal photography, which we knew we were going to build them anyway because of how they needed to nano on and off with Tony's tech. So it ended up being that the costume department, they didn't have time to develop, fit, and fabricate all the costumes for those hero characters. So we ended up doing it digitally. And so you don't notice, but every time you see one of your heroes in that suit, it's digital. Challenge there was getting the right color tone. We also tried very early on in previs the notion of having the helmet be made of the Guardians of the Galaxy breather mesh that allowed them to travel into space. We have some early development of them with that kind of being a bubble around their head, but as soon as we started seeing it come up in the post-vis footage, the directors were like, don't think that looks as heroic as it could possibly look. So we went ahead and developed helmets for the suits. The Guardians tech then just became the visor. For the final battle, our department provided us with an overall map of where the different beats were going to take place. And we staged our previs accordingly. There was a lot of nondescript areas, but then we had some defining moments where we would try and make it recognizable as an area with a collapsed A, for example, or making sure that the water was coming over was distinguishable and sheer and gave you that sort of, that impact of water rushing in.
Don't worry. She's got help.
For the Women of Marvel scene, where all the female characters collect before they take on Thanos, everybody was there on set for that day. So being on the stage with all of these tremendous actors was pretty cool moment to witness that. It was pretty energetic and monumental. I think people understood what they were watching. Ultimately, we ended up having to roto some of our characters off during specific action beats and then completely replace the entire background. That happened quite a bit. It gives the filmmakers more flexibility. It allows them to steal parts from one performance to another part of the sequence. So our building these sets in full CG really allows our filmmakers a lot of flexibility, not only with their live action elements, but with the digital replacements when you have a beat that doesn't cut together as smoothly as you'd like.
Oh, you gotta be shitting me.
Cap versus Cap is an example of a lot of green screen being shot for what you wouldn't otherwise think was an entirely digital and synthetic environment. We had very bare bones set. When they were up on the walkway, for example, we had that part built, we had the stairs built, but pretty much everything else was a digital build. All the glass, all the building, all the background, all the office furniture, everything is digital. The background is a plate of New York skyline at the appropriate height, so that you can get the building tops in the distant background. Then you have another layer of kind of closer buildings that are more in 2.5D, maybe not solid 3D. And then you've got your building structure, so the girders, the mullions, all the glass, all the reflections off all the internal glass, the plants, the telephones, the desks, every little section of glass in that environment is digital. To shoot it, we had Chris Evans act both parts. And then the moments where they were interacting, we had a body double. So you could get the contact moments, you could get the true fight moments. And then whenever the face of the body double was visible, we can convincingly do face replacements. So why not get your hero falling, 30 feet in the air? Why not get your hero getting, punched pretty hard? We're able to do it. So with that sequence, it was a combination of Chris Evans shooting each side, and then when they interacted with the body double. That is a full stunt. I want to shout out to the stunts team because they took some pretty hard falls smacking down those stairs. So it was a really impressive stunt. We were all pretty excited when Captain Marvel came out and when we knew that we were going to get to work with his character. Luckily, we were standing on the shoulders of the great effects team that came before us, so they had developed this really beautiful binary look that we were able to just get in the hands of our vendors. That development was happening as we were posting, so it was a little bit of us chasing them down the line, but in the end, I mean, I think I really love where they landed with that look. Her suit, every time you see it in the movie, when she's in her full costume, is digital. Again, the designs for those suits were not ready in time for us to photograph Bree, so when you saw her at the beginning as she's rescuing Tony Stark, when you see her come back when she's talking to Nat in the Avengers compound with Rocket and Nebula, and then in the final battle when she comes back and kind of saves the day, that's all the digital suit. In our world, for visual effects, we do want to try and get as much practical as we possibly can. Our supervisor made a bet with the line producer that we would have to replace the rat that appears when Scott Lang is coming back from the quantum realm to San Francisco. And Dan insisted that we could find a rat that was trained, that could actually behave on set, and our line producer was convinced we were going to have to replace it. For those of you who are curious, that is not a digital rat. For all the things that we do and for all the things that we replace, that is actually a practical acting rat. I don't have his name, but he's really there.
Where'd he go?
Steve?
The blip effect that we ended up calling it, the sort of post-snap, people disappearing look, that was months of development, and it was supposed to be quiet. It was supposed to be elegant. There was a little bit of pain mixed in, but the pain was really supposed to be felt by the audience and their characters disappearing. So we wanted to give that silence to the viewership. Capturing that, we did about several months of development. We just kept running sim after sim and landed on something that the brothers really fell in love with. It was just running a lot of samples over several months and finally getting to the look. The notion of having the characters reform on screen did come up, but I think everybody could visualize pretty clearly that that would just be a little too weird. You don't really want to see that, and much more powerful if it happens off screen.
And I am Iron Man.
The Tony snap, that was challenging in that we knew the emotional weight that was going to carry. We, as our part in it, had to take a very back seat to that moment, to that performance. So technically, having the background in there, that was not a problem. But finding the right tone of the tendrils of the Infinity Stones eating away at the suit as the suit is struggling and fighting to protect Tony. And you know in that moment that he's not powerful enough to withstand what's coming. And to be able to portray that in a very quiet, visual way and be in the background of what Robert was doing in that moment, well, it took some time to get that right. You'd be lucky to find a dry eye on that one.
We're gonna be okay. You can rest now.
It's going to be really hard for me in my career to top achieving a Thanos and a Smart Hulk. I mean, those characters, for a visual effects person, I mean, those are pretty peak. So I'm enormously proud of the work that we did and of the vendors who came to the table with their A game and continually challenging each other to just get better and better so that the fans and the studio and everybody really got performances from these characters that I think will live on in history in a pretty significant way.
Avengers!
Assemble.
No!